When the envelope arrived, I smiled without thinking. It was heavy, wrapped in gold foil, sealed with Emma's initials in embossed lettering. For a second, it felt like something warm, like family. I ran my fingers over it, picturing the laughter, the dresses, the way my mother would fuss over details like she always did. I hadn't been invited anywhere with them in months, not since the adoption. Maybe this was a chance to reconnect, I thought. Maybe things were healing. Inside, the card shimmered under the light. Emma and Daniel, a celebration of love. Then, tucked neatly in the corner, a small handwritten note from Mom. Please come alone. It's an adults-only event. I blinked at the words. Alone? I almost laughed. It sounded like a misunderstanding. Maybe they meant no plus ones. But then I remembered Lily, my little girl, who still believed weddings were like fairy tales. I called Mom right away. Her tone was polite at first, cautious. It's just an adults-only thing, honey. You understand. But I didn't. Mom, Emma's stepkids are what, 8 and 10? That's fine, but my daughter isn't. There was a pause, long enough for me to hear her hesitation. Then she sighed. Sweetheart, you know how people talk. It's not about her, it's just, she doesn't quite fit the picture. Fit the picture. Those words hit harder than anything. As if Lily, with her curious eyes and soft curls, was a blemish on their perfect family photo. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. My hands shook as I sat on the edge of the couch, invitation still open in my lap. Lily toddled over with her crayons, asking if she could draw us in pretty clothes. I told her yes, my throat tight, pretending not to choke on the ache in my chest. The gold edges of the card seemed cruel now, like it was mocking me for ever feeling included. My sister was getting her dream wedding, and my daughter, my heart, was being erased from it. That was the moment I realized. My family never saw Lily as mine. Growing up, I was the one who never made trouble. While Emma packed her bags for college in another state, I stayed behind, helping Mom with her back pain and Dad with his endless doctor visits. I cooked dinners, paid bills, and listened to my parents complain about how kids these days don't value family. They never said it directly, but I knew I was their reliable one, the daughter they could depend on, the one who didn't chase dreams too big for her place. Emma was the golden child, though. Every time she visited, she arrived with gifts and stories about her glamorous job or her trips to Paris. Mom would beam, Dad would pour wine, and I'd clear the dishes in the background, pretending I didn't notice how the room changed when she walked in. I told myself it was fine. Someone had to be responsible. Someone had to stay. Years passed, and I thought doing everything right would earn me something. Respect, love, maybe pride in their eyes. But when I married and discovered I couldn't have children, all I earned was pity, Mom said softly. Some things just aren't meant to be. I smiled, pretending it didn't feel like a sentence. Then came Lily. Tiny, wide-eyed, with a smile that could melt stone. The first time I held her, I felt something unlock inside me. She wasn't meant to be, she was. She was the piece of me I hadn't known was missing. But when I told my family, their reaction was measured. Mom pursed her lips. You'll love her like your own? Even though she's not blood? Dad just nodded, distracted, as if I'd told him I bought a new lamp. Emma congratulated me over text. 2 sentences, no emojis. Still, I pushed forward, believing love would change things. I brought Lily to Sunday dinners, tried to bridge the distance, but my mother's smiles were always too polite, and Emma's compliments too forced. Once, when Lily called my parents Grandma and Grandpa, Mom flinched. Maybe just Margaret for now, she said, laughing awkwardly. That laugh stayed with me for years. I'd spent my whole life being the perfect daughter, the one who followed every unspoken rule, who bent so others wouldn't break. But sitting there with that gilded invitation, remembering all the years I tried to be enough, I felt something shift inside me. I'd spent my life earning their love. Now I realized I didn't need it. Dinner was at my parents' house, the same table where birthdays, holidays, and arguments had all unfolded over the years. The smell of roast chicken filled the air, but it did nothing to soften the tension in my chest. I sat down with a calm smile, rehearsing every polite phrase in my head. I wasn't there to fight. I just wanted an explanation. So, I began, placing my napkin on my lap. I got the wedding invitation. I just wanted to understand why Lily wasn't included. The silence that followed was thick and telling. My father cleared his throat first, adjusting his glasses the way he always did when preparing to justify something unforgivable. "It's not personal," he said. "It's just image. There'll be photographers, press, guests from Emma's firm. It's complicated. Image?" I repeated softly, my voice trembling. "She's 6 years old, Dad. What kind of image could she possibly ruin?" Mom looked away, her fork scratching the plate. Emma leaned back, swirling wine in her glass. "You can still come," she said casually, her tone too smooth. "Just don't bring her. People talk, and I don't want gossip on my wedding day." Gossip. That word hit harder than I expected. I wanted to ask what gossip she meant, that my daughter wasn't real, that she didn't fit the family mold, but the word stuck in my throat. I saw it then, in their eyes. This wasn't confusion or misunderstanding. It was a choice. The rest of the meal passed in quiet humiliation. Every bite tasted like ashes. I smiled through it, even thanked my mother for dinner, though my hands were shaking when I stood to leave. Later that night, in the small room down the hall, Lily found me sitting on the edge of my bed, crying into my palms. She didn't say a word. She just climbed into my lap and hugged me. Her tiny fingers brushed my cheek. "Did Grandma make you sad?" she whispered. I held her tight, my voice breaking as I told her no. But my heart screamed yes, that night. As her soft breathing lulled me to sleep, I made a silent promise. To her, to myself, I'll make them remember her name. I tried to let it go. For Lily's sake, I told myself to rise above it, that not every battle needed to be fought. But children have a way of noticing the cracks we try to hide. A week after that dinner, I found her at the kitchen table with her crayons scattered everywhere, humming softly as she drew. When I looked closer, my heart twisted. Her sketches were of brides and grooms, of families holding hands beneath flower arches. In every picture, there was a small girl standing just outside the frame, watching. "Who's that?" I asked, forcing my voice steady. She shrugged. "That's me. I didn't fit in their picture." Her innocence sliced through me like glass. I gathered her into my arms, kissed her hair, and told her she was perfect. But my throat burned with a truth I couldn't say aloud. How could I explain that the people who should have loved her most were ashamed of her? That night, as I hung her tiny white dress back in the closet, the one she'd wanted to wear to Auntie Emma's big party, I felt something shift inside me. All the years of silence, all the small humiliations I'd swallowed for the sake of family peace, finally reached their breaking point. They said she didn't fit their image. Fine. Maybe she didn't. But I wasn't about to let them define what family looked like. So while Lily slept, I sat by the window, phone in hand, replaying every insult, every cold glance, every moment they'd made her feel less than whole. My heart ached, but beneath that ache burned something sharper. Resolve. If they wouldn't let her in through the front door, I'd make sure she became the highlight of the entire day. And all it took was one phone call to the charity that sponsored the wedding venue. The next morning, I woke up with purpose, a kind of calm clarity I hadn't felt in months. While Emma was busy posting dress fittings and spa photos online, I reached out to the wedding coordinator. I told her I wanted to volunteer for the charity auction portion of the event, something Emma's fiancé had added to make the wedding look socially conscious. She sounded relieved. Apparently no one in the family had shown much interest in helping with the cause beyond the photo ops. It was the perfect opening. That night, after tucking Lily into bed, I sat in my office, surrounded by photos of her. The day we brought her home, her first school drawing, her gap-toothed smile. Every memory reminded me why this mattered. I logged into the account for the Children's Foundation I'd quietly started 2 years earlier, the one inspired by Lily, built to support adoption awareness and foster care kids. With a few clicks, I made an anonymous donation under the foundation's name, a sum large enough to make the organizers take notice. I didn't do it out of revenge. I did it because I wanted Lily's light to shine, even if my family refused to see it. Within hours, I got a call from the charity's director herself, her voice excited, grateful, honored. "We'd love to feature the foundation during the opening ceremony," she said. "It would mean so much to recognize the donor and the inspiration behind it." "What's the story behind the name?" I smiled to myself. "It's named after a little girl who changed everything." By the end of the week, the event schedule was finalized. Emma and my mother had no idea what was coming. They were too busy arguing about floral arrangements and photographers. I watched their group chats fill with surface-level chaos, while beneath it all, my quiet plan took root. My family wanted to keep Lily invisible. Soon, her name would light up the stage. The morning of the wedding felt surreal. Sunlight spilling through the curtains like gold. The kind of day people post about and caption perfect. Outside the hotel, luxury cars lined the circular drive. Photographers fluttered around like birds, and the scent of roses drifted through the air. My parents stood at the entrance in matching smiles, waving to guests as if they owned the place. Emma shimmered in designer silk, surrounded by bridesmaids and camera flashes. It was all flawless, polished, expensive, unreal. I stepped out of my car alone. Not defeated, not excluded, just quiet, collected. My simple navy dress wasn't meant to turn heads, but my heart pounded as I spotted what I'd been waiting for. The stage backdrop beside the grand ballroom. There it was, a deep blue banner, trimmed with gold lettering, the Lily Grace Foundation, supporting orphaned and adopted children, Lily's Foundation. Her name, her story, her spirit, front and center. For a moment, the world hushed. My mother's hand froze mid-wave. My father's polite smile faltered, a flicker of confusion behind his eyes. And Emma, radiant, flawless Emma, stopped mid-pose, staring at the display as if she'd seen a ghost. Behind the banner, giant LED screens cycled through images, smiling children, hopeful families, volunteers. Then there it was, Lily's face, the same photo they'd refused to frame, the one I'd taken on her first day of school, her hair in 2 uneven braids, eyes bright and fearless. It filled the ballroom like sunlight breaking through a storm. Guests began murmuring. "Oh, that's so touching," someone whispered. "She's beautiful. Is that her daughter?" My mother's lips tightened. My father took a step forward, whispering harshly, "What is this, Mary? What have you done?" I just smiled softly. "It's the charity auction's main sponsor. Didn't you hear? They're honoring adoption work today." Emma's jaw clenched, but she couldn't say a word, not with cameras flashing around us. Her perfect image, her curated day, now shared with a cause she'd deliberately erased. I walked past them calmly, the weight of every dismissal, every judgment, falling away like dust. For the first time in years, I felt tall, whole. Inside the ballroom, the lights dimmed and a hush swept over the crowd. The event host stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand, beaming under the spotlight. "And now," she said, her voice echoing across the marble hall, "we'd like to open today's celebration by recognizing a foundation that has touched countless young lives." My pulse thundered in my ears as Lily's photo filled the screens once again, her smile glowing against the gold backdrop. "And then," I whispered under my breath, watching my family squirm in silence. The host took the mic. The host's voice carried easily through the ballroom, confident and warm. "Before we begin today's festivities, we'd like to take a moment to recognize an extraordinary act of generosity. Thanks to an anonymous donor, hundreds of orphaned and adopted children across the state will receive educational support through the Lily Grace Foundation." The applause was genuine, the kind that fills a room, unprompted. People turned to one another, nodding, smiling. I could see the pride ripple across faces that didn't even know me, but felt the heart behind the name, Lily's name. I watched my family's reactions from my seat. My mother's pearls seemed suddenly too tight around her neck. My father shifted in his chair, pretending to read the program. Emma's smile was frozen. Her jaw clenched so hard the muscles in her cheek trembled. For once, they had no script, no polite excuse, no control. Then came the moment I didn't expect. The host smiled toward the audience. And since our anonymous donor is actually here with us today, we'd love to invite her on stage to accept a token of our gratitude. For a heartbeat, I froze. Every pair of eyes turned toward me as the spotlight found my table. My chest tightened, part disbelief, part pride. Slowly, I stood. My legs trembled, but my steps were steady. The applause swelled again as I made my way toward the stage, past the rows of glittering guests and the family that suddenly felt so small. When I reached the microphone, the host handed me a crystal plaque etched with Lily's name. "Thank you," I said softly, my voice shaking. "But this isn't just my honor. It belongs to a little girl who taught me what real love looks like." A ripple of emotion moved through the crowd. The host smiled knowingly. "Actually," she said, "we have a special surprise." She gestured to the giant LED screen behind us. And then, there she was. Lily's face appeared, Liv from our living room, her hair in pigtails, wearing the tiny blue dress she'd chosen herself. "Hi, Mommy," she squealed, waving at the camera. "I love you." The audience melted. Gasps, laughter, then a wave of applause so thunderous it made the chandeliers tremble. I couldn't speak for a second. My throat ached, eyes burning as I waved back. "I love you too, sweetheart." Behind the glare of the lights, I saw my sister's face, pale, furious, trapped in a perfect storm of her own making. My mother looked as though she might faint, one trembling hand clutching her clutch bag. My father's eyes darted between the stage and the guests' smiling faces, realizing there was no way to spin this, no way to hide. The host placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "The world needs more mothers like you," she said into the mic. The crowd erupted again, louder than before. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the quiet, forgotten daughter. I felt seen, whole, and proud. Lily's laughter still echoed from the speakers, bright and pure, washing away every cruel word, every whispered doubt. As the applause began to fade, I looked down from the stage and met my mother's eyes. Her expression said it all. Shock, shame, and a dawning realization that everyone in that room saw who the real family was. The applause still echoed faintly in my ears as the ceremony transitioned into the reception. Waiters whisked champagne glasses across the room, and laughter rose beneath chandeliers that glittered like frost. From the outside, it was perfect, a magazine wedding come to life. But beneath the music and smiles, I could feel the tension pulsing. My mother hadn't looked at me since I left the stage. Emma hadn't either. I was talking to one of the charity representatives when I felt a sharp tug on my arm. My mother's manicured nails bit lightly into my skin. "Come with me," she hissed, her smile fixed for the crowd. She led me toward a quieter corner behind a floral arch, her perfume thick in the air. Her voice dropped to a furious whisper. "How could you do this? You humiliated us. On Emma's wedding day, no less." For a long second, I just looked at her. The same woman who used to braid my hair before school, who taught me how to say thank you even when it hurt. "Humiliated you?" I said softly. "I didn't humiliate anyone. I just gave my daughter a place she was always meant to have." Her lips trembled. "You blindsided us with that foundation nonsense. You made it about you." Something inside me cracked. Not with anger, with release. "No, Mom, I made it about her. About the little girl you refuse to see because she doesn't share your last name or your genes." Her eyes darted around, panicked that someone might overhear. But the music had quieted, and nearby guests had started to glance our way. I didn't care anymore. The years of swallowing words, of shrinking to keep the peace, were over. "You taught me love was about blood," I said, my voice trembling but clear. "But she taught me love was about heart." A few people turned their heads. I saw Emma approaching, her expression tight, ready to intervene. "Oh, come on," she started, forcing a brittle laugh. "Let's not turn this into—" But before she could finish, her new father-in-law stepped closer, smiling kindly at me. "Actually," he said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear, "your sister's foundation is remarkable. My company would love to partner with her. It's refreshing to see someone in this family doing something meaningful." Emma's face drained of color. Her husband tried to smile, caught awkwardly between us. "Yes, absolutely," he stammered. We were just talking about how moving that moment was. The air around us shifted. Suddenly, I wasn't the embarrassment. I was the example. The guests who'd whispered earlier now smiled when they looked at me. I saw admiration where there once had been pity. My mother looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, her anger fading into something that almost looked like regret. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but I gently shook my head. "It's okay," I said quietly. "You don't have to say anything. I already heard everything I needed to." I took one last look around. The glitter, the music, the family that had always cared more about appearances than love. For the first time, I felt free of it all. Then I turned and walked away, not out of anger, but peace. A week later, the headlines began appearing, first as small local pieces, then across national outlets. Heartfelt moment at the Greenridge wedding. Anonymous Donors Foundation honors adopted children. Every photo told the same story. Lily's smiling face on the LED screens. The crowd applauding, me standing at the podium with tears in my eyes. What was meant to be Emma's grand society wedding had turned into something else entirely. The media barely mentioned the designer gown or the imported orchids. Instead, they focused on the foundation, on adoption, on the message of inclusion. Comment sections flooded with warmth. "She's an inspiration." Finally, someone showing what motherhood really means. That little girl's smile could light up the world. Even strangers began donating to the Lily Grace Foundation. Emails poured in from families wanting to volunteer, sponsors offering grants, schools asking to collaborate. Lily's name, the one they tried to erase, was now synonymous with hope. Meanwhile, Emma's PR team scrambled. They released statements about how the family has always supported charitable causes, and the bride and her sister worked closely on the event's philanthropic efforts. But no one bought it. Every article credited the foundation to me. Every image carried Lily's face, her pure, joyful innocence cutting through the noise of their spin. I watched it all quietly from home, sitting beside Lily as she colored at the kitchen table. She didn't understand the magnitude of it, not really, but when she looked up at me and said, "Mommy, people like my pictures," my heart swelled. "They don't just like them, baby," I whispered. "They see you now." My mother called once, but I didn't answer. The message she left was hesitant, her voice soft in a way I hadn't heard in years. She said the family had been misunderstood, that they wanted to move past the tension. I listened, then deleted it. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same people who'd excluded Lily for not being photo-ready were now basking in the glow of her story. The story they'd tried to hide. Funny, how the family that banned her ended up needing her name for good publicity a month after the wedding. Life found its quiet rhythm again. No flashing cameras, no glittering ballrooms, just the sound of Lily's laughter echoing through our little home. One afternoon, I stood by the window waiting for her school bus when I saw her sprinting up the path, her backpack bouncing, a folded piece of paper clutched in her hand. "Mommy, look!" she shouted, breathless with pride. She opened the drawing carefully, her small fingers smoothing the crayon lines. It showed 2 stick figures holding hands under a banner that read, "My family." Beside us were a sun, a house, and a heart big enough to fill the page. I knelt beside her. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," I whispered. "Where should we hang it?" She grinned, pointing to the fridge, right between her spelling test and last week's finger painting. I taped it up, and for a moment, I just stood there, staring at it. No gold invitations, no perfect photos. No empty approval could ever compare to this. That night, after Lily fell asleep, I made myself a cup of tea and noticed an envelope on the doormat, my parents' handwriting. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a note, written in my mother's delicate cursive. "We're sorry things got out of hand. Let's start fresh someday." There were no details, no acknowledgement of what they'd done, just an attempt to smooth the surface of a shattered mirror. I folded the letter neatly and set it aside. Maybe one day I'd respond. Maybe not. Some silences are softer than forced apologies. As I walked back to the kitchen, my eyes caught Lily's drawing again. The two of us beneath that bright banner, surrounded by color and warmth. That was all the family I needed. Forgiveness doesn't always mean returning. Sometimes it just means moving on. I turned off the lights, kissed Lily's forehead, and felt a peace I hadn't known in years. They tried to erase her from one night, but she'll shine for a lifetime. Months passed, and life bloomed in ways I never imagined. What began as one act of defiance, a single night meant to honor my daughter, had grown into something far greater. The Lily Grace Foundation had expanded nationwide, partnering with schools, hospitals, and adoption centers. We'd helped hundreds of orphans find homes, scholarships, and hope. Every week brought new letters from families whose lives had changed because of Lily's story. On the morning of our first national branch opening, the air was bright with spring sunlight. Banners fluttered in soft gold and white, echoing the same colors from that wedding. Except this time, they symbolized something pure. The courtyard was filled with laughter, children's voices, and the hum of cameras as reporters gathered for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Lily stood beside me, now a little taller, her hair tied in ribbons, holding the ceremonial scissors with both hands. Her eyes sparkled, proud and unafraid. I squeezed her shoulder. "You ready, sweetheart?" She nodded eagerly. "Can I say something after?" "Of course," I smiled, my throat already tightening. After the countdown, the ribbon fell, and the crowd erupted into applause. Flashbulbs lit up around us as reporters leaned forward, microphones extended. One of them asked gently, "Lily, what made you want to help other kids like you?" She blinked, thoughtful for a moment, then said clearly, "My mom taught me that love makes a family." The crowd went silent, that kind of silence that carries weight. Then came the applause, louder than before, filled with something real and human. Tears blurred my vision as I pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her hair. In that moment, everything felt whole. Somewhere out there, I knew my family must have seen the broadcast. Maybe they were watching in quiet shame. Maybe pride. It didn't matter anymore. The story wasn't about them. It never had been. It was about her, the little girl they once thought unworthy of a seat at their table, now standing before the world as a symbol of love, strength, and belonging. They once banned her from their wedding, but in the end, the world celebrated her instead.